Welcome back, Linda. And we have to tell everyone that we just spent close to an hour talking, thinking we were recording the session, and it turned out, and it's not even Mercury retrograde. Although I do notice that I have a bit of a hampered Mercury today because it was my
Okay.
fault. So now all that good stuff that we said,
I enjoy being with you, Andre, so it's no biggie for me.
it's gone into the ether.
Of course, he's
So
shocked that I said that because I said, "What kind of dumb?" Actually, my very first video was Sterling. I did the same thing. I hadn't hit record.
I
I
know.
was so embarrassed, and he graciously said, "That's okay. We'll just do it again."
Well, thank you to
And
you
we need to
because
do it again right away because there was a lot of good information on here.
yeah. Well, thank you for being gracious and doing it again because it was
Oh,
totally my
sure.
fault. So yeah, you were saying one of the topics is this
Submersible.
the submersible, yeah, and you had some really good points to
Well,
make
when
around
I
that.
was on Mel's show on Monday, somebody said, "What happened to that submersible?" And I saw an implosion. And I said, "Yeah, it imploded." And I actually saw some sort of leak and then an implosion.
Mm,
And it was found down near the submarine. So it sounds like they got pretty much, they lost communication an hour and a half in. And apparently it takes 2.5 hours to get down there. But they said the fuel tank they noticed the fuel tank. They notified the family. But my guide said an implosion and they would find the vessel or pieces of the vessel. And that's exactly what happened.
yeah, yeah, this is the
My
part.
God, my guys are they're amazing, amazing. And it's just, I was telling Andre on our previous one that didn't get recorded that I'm glad that if it was something, it was boom, it was fast.
Yeah,
But
'cause
my prayers are with the family, and of course, they're not really dead, but that's a whole different thing that I believe in. You guys may not. So,
yeah, no,
okay. So, I
no,
wanted
no,
to give thumbs up for my family.
yeah, and it's remember we were saying that in the if you look at the astrology, the sign that is kind of most closely associated with oceans, oceanography, all that stuff is Pisces, where Saturn is now. It's been there since March 7th, which separately was pretty much the decline of the Orange Menace. You know, things have been going down, down, down. But in June this month, and very like the 18th, I believe, is the height. And so that's a station, it's when the planet is dead stopped. So the week or two leading up to it and the week or two afterwards, it's very intense. And so this kind of thing happening, it really mirrors that particular disaster, let's say, right? Because
Right.
it's curious that Saturn, as a planet that connects you to rules, regulations, and all of that, which is what they were skirting. This company apparently charging $250,000 per seat, and they were resisting, information from their own employees saying this isn't safe. You should be, doing something different, fixing it, whatever. They ignored it, and actually now it's going to turn out that even if it isn't true, whatever caused the explosion, maybe it would have happened anyway, let's say. But now this is going to devastate the company because obviously,
Oh,
they, you
yes.
know, they won't
And
be
it's
able.
so weird. I literally saw something like for a moment, they all said, "What the F is that?" Because I saw something. I don't know if it was like an air noise or a fluid noise. I'm almost feeling like they knew, oh, and then boom.
Yeah, well, you go into a thing like that, down, down, down into all that pressure. You could almost argue that exploring the bottom of the ocean is as tricky as going into outer space because you're in an environment that is very unforgiving, really high pressure, and you need really good equipment. I mean, I'm amazed that making a company, you're going to make a company where you're going to take people. I mean, I
And
almost
hope,
think
but listen, they were smart enough to get every person down there to sign off their life. They even said you may be killed in this, and they signed that. Yeah, we don't care. We're going anyway.
yeah,
But
well, you can do that, but that's not going to help you now with your business. I
no,
mean,
they're
even
going
if
to
you,
suffer.
no,
Yeah.
it's going to be pretty bad.
But
Absolutely.
I was going to tell you something, doggone it, and I forgot. You were talking about. Anyway,
What we talked about last
the
time?
main thing is the family's been notified. They knew as soon as they saw that debris that it was the ship. Oh, some reporter talking to the Coast Guard said, "Did they find any bodies?" She doesn't know what happens with a
No, they all escaped.
implosion.
They all escaped, and they'll all be found on a desert
No,
island.
they.
You know,
It's
sure.
unfortunate, but it's like
Very
9/11.
unfortunate.
There's just certain things that a human can't get through, and that's it.
No, that's a tough one. Yeah, that's really.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you'd think that. I mean, I know there. Who knows the business model or whatever, but you'd think if you're charging, because that would have meant more than $1 million, in profit or in terms of what the price of the seats. But why not have better safety regulations, safety practices? And you mentioned, I heard you say that there was a billionaire there who took his son, right?
19-year-old son going to the University of Scotland. And I'm sure he thought, cool father, son, adventure. Wouldn't this be fun? The guy that was the captain of the ship, the one that ran it, very smart man. He was involved with a lot of things and he just loved this kind of stuff. And he was happy to do this. So it's really a shame. It truly was an adventure gone wrong.
Yeah, yeah, that's the thing.
I just know I would never go, and I know they'd never take me because they'd say you're taking up too much of the ship. And they did pack a lunch. I don't know if they got to have their lunch, but
yeah.
if it was me going down with them, the lunch would already be gone.
Yeah, no, I know it's not. I mean, it's not. This thing again going that deep like that. You can't take it lightly. Even people that do underwater diving and that kind of thing. You have to be very careful.
Very
'Cause
important.
there also the pressure changes. I mean, it's not just you don't just imagine, oh yeah, it's down there, or whatever. There are factors that make it very, very different than the environment when you're, in your normal oxygen environment. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So
where were we? I'm trying to remember everything we talked about because it was so much fun. I don't want to lose any of it.
yeah, well, we talked a lot. We talked at length about the current state of the politics, especially Trump and the question people have about where things are going and so forth. And I was pretty adamant it's not good. He's going downward, and you see a number of markers like the August period where there's a major change in his chart, which I interpret as a downward motion. And we already know that his trial is slated for then. Not that that's going to, it's extremely unlikely that anything will happen in August that way, except for the fact that they do have to then probably add maybe more to it. We've already heard that Jack Smith gave the
everything. And that's when
evidence.
I had a psychic flash. And I told you, I felt he did it for two subjects. One is to let Trump's attorneys know we got him. So the attorneys are desperate to try to figure out a way, a defense or some sort of admission, guilt, and let's talk about this. And to let that judge, Eileen Cannon, know how bad it is.
Right.
Because I felt her being bold, and one part of me knows that she knows she can't save him. So she doesn't want to be the one to take him down. And she's not alone in this. There's another judge watching her. I see a man standing right next to her, might be the guy that's calling for stuff now, where they're watching her very closely and they're not going to let her get away with pulling any pranks.
Well, that would be really important because and you never know too. She might maybe, although I doubt it, she might act more responsibly, knowing how high profile it is. But then whenever you think of MAGA people, I tell you, MAGA people, they're not very smart. They don't see clearly the consequence of their actions, and so then they'll repeat mistakes over and over.
Yeah, but his numbers are going down. His approval ratings have gone down.
Oh,
he's down at 47. He was at 57.
Yeah, and that's the thing, that a lot of what goes on in politics is about chipping away at someone's approval. By the way, it's what Republicans are doing with the House. they nakedly say it. They say, we're not interested in the truth. You know, Chuck Grassley will say, we don't care that there's no evidence that Biden has committed any crimes. We just want to say it. He pretty
Yeah.
much put it out that way, because when they asked him, well, where's this person that you said? We don't know. Are there any tapes? No. Are there any videos? No. Any papers? No. But we're just going to say it, right? So it's like instead of being a truth pattern, it's basically the message. So when you're doing this, though, it's what they did to Hillary. Benghazi was, again, a made-up story. There was nothing there. But pounding away and pounding away on someone tends to lower their numbers. And this means it makes it harder to run and win. Well, this is what Trump is facing now, because every time there's an investigation, an indictment, you know, all this energy around them. And in his case, it's true, because, hey, like probably all heard, remember we were talking about how an FBI person, agent, I don't know what state they're in, I forget, her name is Kendra something. She was just
Oh, yeah.
she was just put in jail for almost 4 years, and she had secret documents at her house. Trump had top secret documents.
Top secret. And we
So-
discussed about the damage he's done. He's done a lot of damage, and he wasn't keeping those records because he likes to be a big boy on campus. He was keeping them because he can sell them for money. That's what I got.
Yeah,
Thursday.
Yeah. So then, when you think about that, in order for you to acquit Trump of this, it's like you're creating another system of laws, right? You're saying everyone is in this system, and then the president gets to do whatever they want. How does that work? I mean, by that logic, any president could then just do whatever they want, right?
Well, listen, this whole thing, I don't know if astrologically you can see this, will bring about a whole new argument, whether Trump is alive or dead or whatever. I see our nation changing the laws for the Supreme Court as well as for presidents. No, just because you're president, you cannot get away with this. And they'll make them go through some sort of testing, like psychological testing. You have to show your IRS records. You know, this guy just went off the whatever he wanted. He just made stuff up as he went along.
Yeah, that actually it fits really well with the country's chart. Remember, we were talking about how there are these lunations that are critical in people's charts as well. Every 30 years, you get a new moon, and then in between, before you get to the halfway point, there's a full moon, and so there's kind of an unfoldment going on. And you see this in the U.S. chart in the 1930s with Roosevelt, then in the 1960s, you know, key periods where something new is starting. The 1990s, though, in the 1994, that's probably why we've had so many problems, because that was the Newt Gingrich contract with America, and things really started to get dicey and difficult. You know, the way they were playing politics, really ugly, and it's been going like that since then. But now we are about to enter another one, and it's actually a little post the election. But I continue to say, you know, to people who think, you know, we're going to descend into fascism, it does not feel like that at all. It's just that it's a very difficult time, because that's one marker, and then there are other astrological markers that mirror the Civil War, the Second World War. But like I just keep saying, we won the last two. Why can't we win this one too? There's no reason why not, especially because the side that wants to keep democracy is bigger than the side that doesn't.
Yes.
It's that simple. I mean, it's all in the vote, right?
It's people voting too.
Yeah, it's exactly
You gotta
that.
get
I mean,
people out there to vote.
you know, the part that frustrates me is why people, for instance, why Democrats voted in droves in 2020 and many less voted in the midterms. Well, why? I mean, if you're a disciplined citizen and you know what's at stake here, vote all the time so that you can get your side to win. Even with that, we still did pretty well in 2022. But that's the logic, right? And if you think about it, for those that are afraid of Trump, doesn't it make sense that if he's the nominee, we're going to get a big Democratic vote again, because he scares people, rightfully so. You know,
Right.
so in a way, the biggest magnet, biggest way to get a result is to scare people, to have them worry about what they can lose.
Right.
And so then, in that sense, him being the nominee, which I'm not convinced. I don't know. I keep getting this sense that the indictments as they're dropping, you know, the fact that how you put it, right? His numbers are down, so then they're likely to go even more down, and at a certain point, he can be overtaken by someone, and
Exactly.
and then someone else
And
will
I'm
run.
not feeling Santos. I'm not getting Santos.
George Santos?
No, so sorry. The Satan. The Satan.
That would be amazing.
Sorry. The Satan.
Yeah, no, yeah, I could see that too because he's another one that,
His numbers are dropping even
yeah,
in
and
Florida.
he's so on record as defending crazy stuff, especially the way their party is really damaged. The position they've taken on women's rights is lethal.
It's good.
Lethal.
But it's actually going to work in our favor.
Yes.
When the Supreme Court said that they were, taking the Roe versus Wade back to the states, and you knew it was over, I said they've awakened the sleeping giant. They have no clue what they're doing here. They are making everybody, just like Roberts got a taste when they were trying to get rid of Obamacare. He knew if they turned it down, well, then where was everybody going to go?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No.
So
exactly.
this is what they did was help us win the war.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the thing that, in a way, all their candidates are already in trouble in that they're trying to defend positions that are very unpopular. So it doesn't matter who they put there. But I would say that Trump, in that sense, is very vulnerable to being taken down because the constant swirl of bad information that he's around, it just keeps coming out. And I mean, because you got to ask yourself, if the people that follow him are so committed, then why did he drop 10 points?
Exactly.
It means that they saw that and went, wait a second.
Well, people are getting tired. That's what Barr told Trump. Sir, you're not going to win. He said, what are you still doing trying to stop Obamacare during COVID? And people are tired of the chaos.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
exactly.
constant chaos. But speaking of Santos, I did on our last video that we didn't record, I had gotten a hit and I wanted to bring it up again. They said it was his uncle, his father, and his aunt who gave him the money, which is a lot of money. And he had stolen from his aunt before, which you said happens all the time. But I got a hit, and I'll just say it. I feel that there's money behind them, like it was filtered through the father and the aunt. So if you accept this, and we'll give you a little change on the side, and give it as if you're giving it. That's what I felt. So this should come out.
Yeah, well, and then the thing is, remember I mentioned that ties him to money laundering and tax evasion because you are not supposed to, even within a family, you can't take money and give it to anyone without declaring it in taxes or creating trusts. And I mean, you need to do things in a really careful way because any exchange of money is taxable. So,
well, he was dead set on releasing this information, dead set against it.
Oh,
I'd rather go to jail, blah, blah, blah. And then people were saying, he said, my family, but that's none of your business. And I think he knew his family were used as pawns, and now it's really going to get ugly.
Yeah. No, and I remember that I said in that when we last talked that society overall does not reward evil, awful behavior like this because what this kind of behavior does is it destroys the structures, it damages or threatens the structures, and so society is set up to protect itself. And so very seldom do you see people like Trump and George Santos, and this kind of behavior is not rewarded. It may take longer, maybe shorter, but in the longer term, where's this guy going to go? I mean, he's going to be in trouble. There's no question.
I know. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So where else did we go?
Well, we had talked about how pretty much at length around this whole question with Trump and what was likely to happen. I think we already pretty much covered that.
And you mentioned about April.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So there's this thing.
I like that thing that you were talking about.
Yeah. Correct. So there was I had a session with an astrologer a few days ago where he brought up an important conjunction that is coming up in April 24 where you get Jupiter-Uranus conjunct, and it's right on Trump's MC. And Patrick Watson, the astrologer, his contention is that he sees this as being assisted by authority figures, and so it's pretty easy to project into a judge that cuts him a break, lets him off the hook, and that is possible. It's totally possible. The problem with that argument overall, though, is that maybe Eileen Cannon does that. Let's say it's possible,
Yeah.
but it's almost certain that there will be other indictments. He's not just going to be dealing with that. And you can see in the astrology that you always look at the flow. And so there's a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, happens once, goes through, because sometimes those conjunctions, they go back and forth over a place. They're a lot more dangerous in terms of effect, power, right? If they go back and forth. In his case, it moves through, that never comes back there. Whereas he then, shortly after that, I think it's by June, there's a Saturn station in a very unfavorable place for him. So when you look at that, you're thinking, I mean, you might get some break, but overall, this is not going to go well. And
Yeah.
there's no way that you could be saved. And then separately, I had mentioned that someone on the channel made a funny comment that I thought, when I saw it, I thought, yeah, actually, that fits pretty well. Because a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, when you look at his chart, you're putting at the highest point of the chart, or at least one of the two most elevated points, you put these two planets in a place where they get tremendous prominence. But the problem for him is that you can interpret that as the Jupiter in his chart connected to his death house. This person said, well, I think if you have Jupiter-Uranus there, maybe you're just going to have a massive stroke and die. Okay, I mean, we shouldn't be laughing, like you say all the time, right? For entertainment purposes only.
Entertainment, and we can't wish bad on others.
That's right. But I have to recognize, even though in a sense I thought, wow, but yeah, that's distinctly possible because there are connections to that part of his chart. And I've been repeating this over and over for the last number of years. This guy is constantly navigating through very dangerous health aspects. And when you see this in a person's chart and you see that he's not particularly interested in taking care of himself, lives a life of constant stress, he seems pretty indulgent, he's out of shape. This is not good. This is not good at all because you're wiring into the cycles, in a negative way, and you could be knocked out. I mean, for example, a thing like that, maybe it doesn't kill you, but what if it renders him mute? That could happen. People have lost their power of speech all of a sudden. That could happen too. So the point being, there is more than one way for it to happen. And when I look at the overall nature of the chart, I would not be confident at all if I were in his shoes. Not to mention, we were talking about how this guy, I mean, he's like a crime machine and he seems almost suicidal in the way he behaves. I don't know if you saw that thing. There were a number of conservative commentators, conservative people that tweeted, one guy said, I can't believe he said that on Fox. He said, what an idiot. He said about Trump. And another person said, first rule of federal indictments is stop talking. And then he said, no, really, that's the only rule.
I know. He just
Trump never follows those rules. And the thing is, separately, it was asked apparently whether can Jack Smith use video footage or audio footage all the way up to the last day before the trial. Yes, the answer is yes. All he has to do is say to the judge, this is what we're going to do because we have more evidence. So that's why they tell you, don't talk because, and especially don't incriminate yourself.
Exactly.
Simple. But he's a master at that,
right.
Yeah, exactly. So
the other, and I got to ask you, I don't know if this shows in the chart, but he has gotten away most of his life and being an idiot like this, being mean like this and cruel and name calling. And, that Fox News guy said, and you called so-and-so this and you called so-and-so that, and they all don't want you to be president again. And notice he didn't defend himself. But is that part of the reason he gets so unbelievably pompous is because he's gotten away with things for so long?
Well, Trump has a really very strong Jupiter. He was born with Jupiter in a station, really tight in a station. So that's a really lucky energy, a life of privilege, a life of lots of expansion, you know. However, a planet like that, if misused, and
Which he misused
which
it.
he misuses it terribly, because it's not just in his chart, you see that it does really good things and really threatening, dangerous things, where he
Yeah,
overexpands, that's Trump. Trump is all hyperbole, and you know, and especially he makes things up. He's got that Jupiter is in the house of messaging, and he's got Neptune there too, both of them in a station. It's all basically made up stuff. He just
right.
creates a message. But the thing is, it's like I say to people, I used to be a distance runner, and I remember realizing it's not how a race starts, it's how it ends. Be really careful how you run that race, or you will really be sorry, because if you go
Right.
too fast at the beginning, you're going to be in horrible pain at the end, right? And
Right.
you see this a lot in people's lives where your karma can coalesce on you as you're getting older, in part because you and I were talking earlier how we thought, you know, this guy sounds a little demented, like almost like he's lost part of his brain.
Reality.
I
Yeah.
have a hard time believing that Trump 20 years ago would be this heedless, like the way he
Yes.
is today. So, in other words, there's a self destructiveness that kicks in almost to bring you to account later in your life. And to me, this is the signature of this guy's chart and his life, where he is now. There's a descent, you know, where he's moving toward paying for all his previous, you know,
Right. And he was
crimes, whatever.
phobic about Russia when he first got, because
Oh,
he knew he didn't deserve being president, and he wanted to make sure he got rid of any evidence that that was in fact had happened, that he got put in by outside entities.
yeah, no, that's totally true. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a separate subject, but you know, I bring it up because, in case people hadn't noticed, this is always in the news. But you got to be careful that you don't forget, because it's, you know, it's always coming at you, and you can just sort of overlook it. This whole thing with the Mueller report and the Russia collusion is 100% true, and the proof is that back in 2018, I believe, or 19, when the Republicans were in charge of the Senate Intel Committee issued their report, and they said that there was a serious counterintelligence problem that was perpetrated by Paul Manafort and the Trump campaign.
Oh,
But
yes.
they released that. And then Marco Rubio went immediately to Twitter to say, no, we found nothing. And because the followers, the MAGA people, they don't even bother checking the actual news. They just take the news from their people. You know, it's an outright lie, right? But
Right.
it's
Right.
the way they're trafficking all the time. It's the message, but not the truth. And yet, yes, this had happened. And so he's been in it. I mean, everything he does is corrupt. Everything.
I know. I
Everything.
know.
You know, no question. So,
And
but
then
yeah,
we were talking. Go ahead.
you know, just to say, bottom line with people, don't worry. As far as Trump being held accountable, relax.
It'll happen.
Takes time. Yeah, that's all.
And I said, I don't know, I said on that last video that I see that we as a nation really looking at this and pulling it apart for years to come, putting things in place to prevent something like this happening again.
Yeah, which is, you know, this fits that thing about the country. There are multiple things happening that are dicey. I get it. This mirrors there are cycles that mirror the Civil War in the 1860s. There are points there that they're like the Second World War. There is the country's new moon. But that's what happens when, in fact, it'll happen to an extent or a big extent in a person's chart as well. If you have your own chart and big
Yeah.
things are happening, almost no one will tell you, oh, there was this big change and it was really, really easy. No, people sometimes struggle for a while, but then they get a new start and things can be better. And I often thought, maybe you did too, if you go back to 2016, I remember thinking, why is this guy even here? And I thought to myself, he's going to accomplish the opposite of what he thinks. For example, women have more power now because of Trump, right?
Oh, yeah.
Laws have to be changed because Trump's expertise is he's very good at showing the holes in the you know the problem with democracy. He sees the weak points and he exploits it. So then you got to plug those holes. It's that simple, right? Because you were saying how the idea, let's pass laws that person has to show their taxes, you know,
Yeah.
do a competency
Do a
test.
psychological testing.
Right, right,
I mean,
exactly.
this is a guy that ate paperwork. He ate it. He put it, shredded it, and put it in the toilet. He wouldn't let you keep any information about what him and Putin talked about.
Well,
What is that?
I mean, it's embarrassing. It's got to be. I don't know if he'll be sitting at his own trial for the records, but it's amazing that the prosecution's first statement is to show all those videos when he was attacking Hillary. I'm going to put in laws that are going to protect the national security. Oh,
I love it.
And then there's your karma, right? Where you think to yourself,
there's your karma. That's you think it should be criminal, this and that. Yeah,
exactly. And by the way, this is a GOP problem. And I would go back to 94, that last new moon that involved the Newt Gingrich revolution and all that, because it feels like they're all on this game. Gingrich himself back then was attacking Clinton, oh, this guy is immoral and what an immoral, and he was doing the same thing. He ended up being exposed. I mean, they have no real morality at all. It's all, scorched earth and so forth. And it's in part why we're here. But then that's how things change. You have to,
look what they're doing to Adam Schiff. They wanted to impeach Biden, but McCarthy doesn't even want it to go up because he knows better.
No, and probably McCarthy's probably, even though I think McCarthy is probably the most dim-witted, House leader in a generation, even he probably knows, and he probably will tell those radicals, listen, the last time we did this in the 90s, it hurt us. We went after Bill Clinton. And with Bill Clinton, there was something. It wasn't an impeachable thing, but
he did lie, yeah.
He did lie and so forth. Or maybe it was impeachable, but it wasn't as impeachable as when they got
But there's nothing with Biden that they...
No, there isn't. And this is the thing that they've descended into this thing where their leaders, people like Chuck Grassley, he'll say, well, we don't care that there's no evidence. We don't care. We just want to put it out there. It doesn't matter to us that I can't produce a witness. I can't produce a record. You feel like asking, well, then what are you saying? I can go out on the street and find somebody to tell me that they hate Biden, and that's not going to be the case. You should have some evidence, right? It's shameful. It's totally shameful. That's all I can say.
So we were talking about the Supreme Court. I'm trying to think of the details.
Well, the Supreme Court, what we mentioned was that, well, at least I'm remembering this, the Alito, because Alito is suddenly the one, that he's the one. And a couple of things we said. One was that last year he was really doing well because Jupiter was in his sign. Now he's seeing the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
But we also talked about how when Alito came into the court is where you see the start of this thing where it's all power to the white male privileged, personality type thing. Because from Alito, they start to loosen the regulations so they can do more of what they want with, these ethics rules and things like that. And then you get into the 2010 period and they bring in Citizens United, giving, dark money, all kinds of power. So there's been this descent and it made the court a lot more corrupt. But again, there's cycles.
It's going to change.
Yeah, it's going to change. And usually, if you look at the astrology, when you see new moons and you see them happen, you know that there's going to be a new standard set. And this is where, again, a person could say, well, great, but how do you know that the standard isn't going to be, fascist politicians, fascist judges? Well, because look at the two sides, and the side that wants to be democratic outnumbers the other side. It's just a matter of voting. Unless you're proposing we start shooting at each other, which doesn't seem like a very good plan, how are you going to solve this problem? The only way to solve it is you have to vote and count on the system to implement the rules. It has so far. Think about the fact that the rules held firm with Trump there, which is a pretty big miracle because he was trying to, use the Kraken lady. The Kraken lady and the other guy to say...
You're not hearing nothing about her.
I know. She's disappeared. I know. The cracked in the head Kraken lady. So, if it holds up under that, why would you be less optimistic about it holding up when there's an actual normal president in power, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I will say, though, one thing. We didn't discuss this in the previous one, but now I'm remembering that I brought this up with you in a conversation around, or in a text thing where I said, Merrick Garland, I got to tell you, I've been defending him, and I think overall he's a really good man. But I frankly think that we need someone more like Adam Schiff, or I think his way of doing, uh, being the top prosecutor, it's a little bit too soft for me.
He's a little too soft.
I don't understand why they spent a year twiddling their thumbs when there was so much evidence back in 2021. And
But I do know he had to filter out because he had a lot of Trumpsters in there too.
yeah, and I mean, I can see
FBI.
his point of view. And I noticed that in his chart, I don't have a time, but just from the day, the problem is that he's still in the midst of this aspect that tends to confuse a person. They get kind of, you know, they're not totally focused in picking a position and holding it. They'll tend to sort of move around too much, consider too many points of view, which is what he's done. And I think that's, think about it, it's delayed the prosecution by a whole year. They probably would have had momentum now. Although, of course, separately, that's part of Trump's fate. And I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters because overall, this goes to the thing where when I see his chart, I think he's got even more problems post the election because where the planets are going in 2025 and 2026 and 27 are really threatening to him on the legal level. And what else could it be? I mean, every time I see stuff go through that house, you see an indictment or a problem or E. Jean Carroll or,
So he's going to have, Merrick Garland's going to have problems?
no, this is Donald Trump. But
Yeah.
I drifted off into saying that, no, Merrick Garland, no. Merrick Garland actually, I think by next year, he's more free of that, the confusing pattern.
Do you think he's going to stay for the new administration or do you see him stepping down? I'm feeling like he might step down.
I would say no, yeah, I would agree with you. My hit on that is no. Either he quits or he's asked not to. And I
Yeah.
honestly, I think you need somebody more firm who is, like in other words, he was doing this to try to restore the objectivity of the Justice Department, but that's like over restoration.
That they're not up for either side.
No, because I mean, they've gone out of their way. Look what he did with the Hunter Biden. Biden, as president, could have removed that prosecutor who was put there by Trump to
Yeah.
take Hunter Biden down. And Biden left him there. And what did the guy come up with? 2 misdemeanors and a gun charge. And of course, you can't do anything with that. All you can do is slap in the wrist because that's all it is. And now
Right,
the Republicans
exactly.
are saying, oh, this is so unfair. It's not unfair. It's just there's nothing there. It's like that guy with the goatee, that Durham guy. He's trying to prove the unprovable.
Oh
and of
my
course,
God, he's a
he found
laugh.
nothing. Yeah, it's like these guys thrive on nothing. They thrive on
And
absolutely
they
nothing.
had him on. They decided to bring him down there to Congress so they could. And Schiff and what's his name, the Eric Swalwell,
Swalwell,
they
yeah.
tore him up a new one.
Yeah, no, but I mean, come on. I mean, are you kidding me? You are a top flight prosecutor at the top levels of government, and you go into a Congress meeting where you're being called to testify under oath, and you say that you don't watch the news when they're saying to
Yeah.
you, "Hey, like, did you see that drop?" I don't watch the news. Well, Schiff was saying, "Did you read the Mueller report?" Right? That's kind
Yeah.
of important for a
What did he
prosecutor.
say?
He said he couldn't remember. He was hemming and hawing. If he did and he's lying about it, that's bad. And if he didn't read it, it's even worse. So, I mean, this is like what you see in the GOP is a lot of incompetence too. People that are just not very good at what they do. They're lousy. At
I
what they
just
do.
can't get over how Barr went with him to Italy. They said that's unheard of.
Oh, I know.
They thought they were going to get something good on Trump on Biden, and they got nothing. They got stuff on Trump.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, this is the other irony that every time they've done something to, see if they find the problem. Remember those recounts, the ninja recount in Arizona, and they came up with more Biden votes. I mean, it's ironic. It's ironic because everything they try flips over, but a lot of it is from not being very smart. I mean, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but that's the truth, right? It'd be really scary if you had, imagine if you had a lot of Mitt Romneys that were corrupt. That would be really dangerous because he thinks clearly, and then he might actually find good strategies. But even DeSantis is obviously smarter than Trump. There's no question.
Yes.
However, DeSantis is not politically astute because
No.
DeSantis
And this
Okay.
woke thing is boring as hell.
boring, and like you're on an election cycle and you implement a 6-week abortion ban. Come on, like anybody would tell you stupid move, or
Bad move.
you're gonna fight with Mickey Mouse. You're gonna start.
Oh, you're going to screw up with teachers too. They need teachers. They're leaving in droves.
Yeah, exactly. So there's both. There's political acumen, and then there's intelligence, but there's not a ton of that in the Republican Party. There isn't. And by the way, the bottom line to all this, because someone could say to me, look, you're just biased. You pull for the Democratic Party. You're strident about it. I don't care, whatever you say. But here's the thing, right?
Yeah.
The GOP operates in bad faith. These people are bad faith actors. They're a crew of liars and scoundrels. I'm sorry. Watch them do their thing. All they do is, as soon as something bad about Trump comes out, like, I mean, holding those records there is politically is like almost like murder. It's awful. And then they come out with, what about the Biden crime family? Okay, well,
Exactly.
What do you got? Nothing. We just want to say things. That's really what they're saying, because they got nothing. Where's the proof, right? You know?
Can I ask you something though, with that Jupiter aspect with Trump? If he had done a different way, could he have made something out of himself?
Yes. I mean, the irony is, I've had quite a few laughs about this in the interpreting Trump's chart in different places, where I'll say to people, that chart, see the 12th sign in a chart. Actually, you have your sun in the 12th. You're a perfect example of this. You tilt towards spirit. That's the 12th sign, right?
And that's what I'm doing.
Right. So your life goes along that path. And the last I heard, unless you're hiding something from me, you haven't been, the FBI doesn't come to talk to you, you know, you're fine because you're not doing all those things, right? But the 12th, it's a range. The high end is spirituality. That's why it rules. You put monasteries there. But you also put prisons there because that's the last house. That's where the karma coalesces. So people that are horrible criminals are in that house as well. It's pretty easy to know which one of those two Trump is. I don't think Trump uses his 12th house to go on meditation retreats. He doesn't do that, right? So then that's the result he gets. So yes, he could have. This is where, if you knew, for example, in New York, he was born, you know, that day, 10:54 a.m., all that, and there's someone down the street born with the same chart, they might have turned to doing things like nonprofit work, maybe spiritual work, or any kind of thing and then they would get a totally different life.
Yeah.
That's the like. So the chart is actually, I think it's, your chart is 80% what you do and 20% what happens to you in a kind of, you know, faded way. So just do good things, you know, focus your life. This guy doesn't do that. He's always been this way. He's always looking for a way. How can I break the law? How can I, you know, go against the flow? And that's why people are laughing at him now, because they're saying, how could you not just return the records? Bill Barr said all he had to do was return the records. That's it.
Right.
When he was asked, but he wasn't going to do that. There was no way. Like you said, he probably saw the money, right? He probably figured, I have these records, they're worth money, you know, and I'm the president, I can do whatever I like because Biden keeps records in Chinatown. What was that whole story?
I know.
Talk about it. Like, I'm telling you, it is scary the way he makes things up. So,
they're not going to be able to be that comfortable coming up. I do not see status quo. I see changes.
Yeah, no, that's without question. See, there, if you go to the pure cycles that are taking place, when you see the correspondence to the Second World War and to the Civil War, and also to that lunation pattern, this is the kind of thing that, well, people don't live to be 250 years old, but if they did, you would still say the same thing. This is big change. A big change period, right? But this is where I know it scares people, because of course it's better not to go through it, obviously, right? I mean, who wants to be under stress? But sometimes that's what happens. For a country to go to the next level, you got to go through the pain. And then what tends to happen is, at the other end of it, you get more freedoms, you get more clarity, you get better laws, because this guy has been an expert at poking holes, right, in the legal system, you know. So that's where it's at. All right. Well, I don't know if we've covered everything. We probably missed something.
If I think of something, I'll let you know. We'll talk about it next Thursday.
Yeah, sounds good. All right.
My sister's coming. That's why I can't stay over one.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, you guys.
Soon.